Deputy, you faced so many obstacles between the person who was in need and the point that you arrived at. What was going through your head when you saw the obstacles and just, knowing you had to get to this person?
Number one thing was just get there. It didn't really matter how. I looked at the wall and I saw that it was much taller than me, but I saw there was a small electrical box, and I figured it might hold my weight, and I used it to propel myself up. And the fall down, I just gripped the wall, and I was going to hit the ground eventually.
When you see that video, your own body cam, what's kind of going through your head reliving?
When I'm watching it, I kind of feel like most people, what I could have done better and what I should have done better. But I get to see that, my job actually does make a difference to some people in this case.
What's going through your head when this guy's still in the water and it's basically on you to get him out and, get help for him?
Number one thing was I knew just to try to get him to where he can keep an airway, and I wanted to get him back onto dry land. I could see he was struggling. He was still semi-conscious, but he was obviously not to the point where he could pull himself up. And his wife was not physically capable of pulling him up, so I knew it was kind of on both of us to do it.
Do you know how he got there? I understand he was a caretaker, but do you know what happened that led up to this?
From what the wife said, he wanted to go look out at the scenery before having to go to a doctor's appointment, and after she realized he was gone past the time there was to leave, she tried calling him. She couldn't get hold of him, so she walked outside, because it's kind of a, as you can see, it's a ways of a walk, and she found his cell phone laying on the floating dock, and she didn't know where he was, and then she looked around and heard splashing and found him in the water. I don't know if he was under the water, if he was face down on the water, or what. I just know from what I got there.
I know you all trained to save people, but were you scared? Was it nerve-wracking? I mean, did adrenaline just kick in?
Adrenaline kicked in. It was, in training kicked in. There was no fear that I had. My biggest worry was the fact that I realized, if that gate doesn't open, it's going to take fire rescue longer to get there. I can only do so much on scene, but it comes from our brothers and sisters in fire rescue that are actually going to go from pulling him out to getting him the help he needs.
And who was able to open the gate?
A property manager was on his way already, and I think somehow he opened the gate. To be honest with you, I don't know who opened the gate.
Gotcha.
Were you aware of how severe the situation was before you actually got there?
Yes and no. We knew it was a drowning. We knew it was in progress. There was a language barrier. And once the call came out as drowning, I stopped listening to really what the small notes were. I just needed to know where, when, and how long, and how to get there.
And was this a gated community?
It's not a gated community. It's just it's just a larger house that they have their own gate.
It's it's huge. This property is. I mean, could you hear her screaming?
Initially, no. When I ran to the backyard, I thought you'd catch it in the video, but you don't. I actually stopped for a second because I thought I had the wrong location, and I thought I was going to have to run diagonal from the houses, but then I heard her yelling because she was out of view. And obviously I didn't see anything that looked out of the ordinary.
How long have you been a deputy?
I've been a deputy for about 18 months now, and it's been an exciting adventure so far.
What kind of keeps you going when, I know she kind of asked this question before, but when you have so many obstacles and you're not hearing the screams and you don't know if you're in the right place, what keeps you going to try to find them?
What keeps me going, I know, is the fact that I've got a job, and that obviously if they call 911, there's no one else that they can call. We're the last line of, they couldn't do it, so now they're calling us, and I find a way to get there.
You've had some time to process this. Now, I understand that this gentleman is in the hospital. He's in critical condition from what we understand. Knowing the state he's in now, has it dawned on you where things could be if you hadn't been able to scale that wall across those acres of land?
Absolutely, it has, and I don't know what would have happened because that's not what the case was. I just know that obviously there's some stuff maybe I could try to look to and be more proactive.
Have you ever done something like this before? And if not, what in your training prepped you for this moment?
I've never done anything like this. Training would be yearly in-service where we do CPR. We don't really have a drowning type of training itself, but number one thing is just breathing. They teach in CPR, airway, breathing, circulation. If you got those ABCs, you're kind of good for there.
you were pretty much wearing what you're wearing now when you climbed that fence and all that?
Yes, I was wearing a slightly different uniform. This is what I wear on a day-to-day basis. I happen to be wearing a different uniform that day, but it kind of dawned on me that stuff might fall off, but I don't really think that was a priority at the time. So
Yeah, I was just thinking, it's heavy.
It
You
is.
had all that weighing you down, and you're still adding.
it is
adding to
heavy,
this.
and to be honest with you, I didn't feel it on there at the time.
When you pulled up and saw that huge fence, what went through your mind?
But I thought, okay, I've got to get a way through. And driving through it was not an option, so I knew that I could just scale the wall one way or another. I did forget that my backup was right behind me. One of us could have lifted one of each other up, but I was able to get over, so we just went from there.
You weren't even really thinking about that. You were just like looking for a way to do it.
I was just looking to a way to get over the wall. Exactly. Find the patient and get there.
How do you use this experience moving forward as a deputy?
Just kind of once it happens once, you can broaden your vision, because when times like this, adrenaline, you kind of get tunnel vision, and at least this time I was able to stay aware of my surroundings enough to see the wall and the small step to get over it.
Have you been able to speak to the victim's family yet?
I stayed for a little while at the hospital, and I did speak to the wife, and she was very grateful that we were able to help. I tried to go back at the end of shift, but he had been transferred to hospital, so I wasn't able to catch up with him then. But they do have my contact information, and I look forward to hearing back from them.
Anything else you want to add about that experience? I mean, 18 months on the job. Is this the most?
It's definitely, I think it's important for a lot of people to know just basic safety, life-saving devices. A basic life support is called CPR. And then if you're going to be near water and you don't know how to swim, at least keep something nearby or let somebody know you're going to go near water. That way they know to check up on you if you haven't been heard from in 5 minutes, not 30.
You said when you rewatch the footage, you're thinking about what you could have done better. What are some of those things that you're thinking?
Possibly just helping my partner get over before I went over the wall. But I mean, we both talked about it afterwards, and she thinks that it was probably a good decision that I went over the wall, because fire rescue was right behind me anyways. We just needed someone to get him out of the water. That was the first step.
And the wife said he'd been out there for 30 minutes, but she doesn't know how long.
She doesn't know how long exactly. When I asked him, granted it was a semi-conscious answer, he told me he was in the water for 30 minutes.
Wow.
When you look at him, to a layman, it seems like, oh, he's going to be fine, like he's conscious. But how do you know what you need to do? Because he seems to be breathing, he seems conscious.
I could immediately tell that he wasn't fully conscious. He was conscious enough to not need CPR, and he had enough, and he could breathe on his own. At that point, you don't want to administer CPR. When I did roll him into the recovery position, and I held my hand on his back, I could actually feel fluid within his chest cavity. And as long as he was breathing, I kept asking him questions. They sounded dumb. I was asking his date of birth. I just wanted him to keep talking and to stay awake with me.
After this, do you just go on to the next call? What's the protocol?
After that, I made my supervisors aware of what happened. I went to the hospital just to get basic information, and the call was cleared, and I went back in service for the next call.
But it stays with you in your head, doesn't it?
Absolutely, it
I
does.
imagine you thought about that all night.
I did, because my thoughts were with the family, because obviously they were just preparing for any other day, and it was absolutely not any other day for them.
Is this your first job?
It is not my first job.
Okay.
It is my first, I would say, profession, but this is more of a...
I mean, first job as a deputy?
Absolutely, first job in law enforcement, first job in any type of public service.
Gotcha.
Great. Thank you. Golf clap.
Deputy, how old are you?
Yeah.
I am 24.
Thank you.
Do you want a one-on-one?
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for that.
Thank you. Very
Did
much
your
appreciate it.
thumb drive too?
And great job, man. That was awesome. That would have scared the
Fox.
bejesus out of me.
It's
Yeah.
it was